I used to ask my dad to tell me a little bit about his time in the Korean War, and he usually didn't share much. In 2006, he received a notice for a reunion of his Korean War company that would be held in Hondo, Texas. He didn't go. It seemed that was the furthest from the place he'd like to be. He declined the next year too, and then in 2008, he died, and I thought my questions would never be answered. A month after his death, my family went to the reunion in Atascosa County, Texas, and that's where I found out about my dad's experience in Korea and what his platoon went through. Then I began to understand why he wanted to forget, but I also knew I couldn't let the world forget.
The people of the United States, the civilian population, need to really appreciate what the soldier does, because they have no concept of the training that the man goes through. They don't have any concept of what combat's like.
Today, the latest weapons, coupled with the fighting skill of the American soldier, stand ready, on the alert all over the world to defend this country, you, the American people, against aggression. This is The Big Picture, an official television report to the nation from the United States Army.
Welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Captain Carl Zimmerman. The Big Picture is a report to you from your Army, an Army committed by you, the people of the United States, to stop communist aggression wherever it may strike. Today, The Big Picture brings into focus the first 40 days in Korea. It was the beginning of the fighting there, when every ridge was a heartbreak ridge. Let's go back to June 1950, when our troops felt the first thrusts across the 38th parallel. The story is best told in the language of the soldier who was there.
I didn't understand war. I saw a lot of it in the theaters. Newsreels. But that was my total knowledge of war.
We knew there was a war on. We knew that it'd probably get a little worse than what we thought it was going to get, but we didn't know for sure. But when we did find out, the impact hit us when you got the draft notice.
The popularity of the Korean War was pretty low because we'd just come out of World War II.
This story is hard to tell, painful, because our outfit was in training a few weeks ago. Some of the boys who were with us aren't around anymore. They were good men, good soldiers. They had learned to fight, and they had the guts for fighting. But when it came, it was like a sock on the back of the head. Korea started rough. The first 40 days were a battle for time, with a handful of men against an army. Yes, they were good men, good soldiers. And no story of the Korean War can be told without saying first how well they fought against great odds. In the beginning, there were only a couple of companies from the 24th Division. No brass bands at the airport. A few days before, some of us had been in cities, spending leave time at Fuji, something like that. We weren't scared. We didn't know. We got stuff out of the planes. We moved out. Nobody said, this is it. Nobody said you have arrived in Korea to beat back 5 North Korean communist divisions. Somebody did say, we're here to delay the Reds. Okay, let's go.
Yeah, I wasn't drafted. I was a National Guardsman. I went in initially as a volunteer. I lied about my age. I told them I was born in 1932, and I was actually born in 1933. So I was 17 years old. I had my father's permission. I just felt like we were in a war that every man would need to step up to the bar and be counted for.
When I received a letter, the good old, that I want you, you know, the man with the big hat. I was born in Pearsall, Texas, quite some time ago. And then during the big depression right here in the United States in the 30s, my dad went back to Mexico because he could not find a job right here. We went to a place in Torreon, Coahuila, in Mexico. And I grew up and went to school there. So my primary language became Spanish. I was getting close to the 18th birthday. So I told my dad, I said, I'd like to go back to, with my aunts that were in the United States, to be present there for my birthday so I would not lose my citizenship, which I don't think that is true. But and so I came back to the United States and to be close in case they called me, and to register, which is an obligation that all citizens have.
I had a pilot's license at the time. I learned to fly in high school, and I wanted to fly airplanes, and that's why I enlisted in the Naval Air Corps Reserve. After, I guess, about a year and a half, I began to see something about how wars were fought. And like I told you earlier, it's hard to dig a foxhole on a deck of a ship. And that helped change my mind to let them draft me and go into the Army.
I was drafted November the 8th, 1950. I graduated from high school in 47, and the class of 46, about all of them was still drafted for World War II, you know. And I was expecting to really have to go, but it didn't bother me.
Just got a notice in the mail, you know, that drafted, and I just turned it into the company, you know, and they said report to Fort Sam.
When I got out of high school, I planned on being a farmer, and I had a few little cows, and so I mortgaged them and bought me a tractor, and so about, I was 16 when I got out. I got that about 17, I guess, and I got my notice when I was 22. I got rid of everything. Cows paid off the debt. My parents couldn't take care of them, so with nobody else, so just had to get rid of everything.
I had a twin brother. He's deceased now. And at that time, when they needed some draftees to fill in for the Korean War, we were farming with my dad out in the country and ran some cattle. The draft came along, and we were called up in the Korean draft because we were eligible. We were just the right age. And one thing that was, I think, unfair to my dad at the time, that we were both drafted, twins, both at the same time. And my dad went over there and said that it was unfair. He thought it was unfair for both of us to go to the service. And they put him on a spot that he couldn't answer. He said, well, then you pick it, the one that you want to leave here, and we'll take the other one. And Dad said he couldn't do that. That's the reason we were both drafted at the same time.
Well, I was just a 17-year-old kid, and it was in the wintertime, and there wasn't anything there. It was in school, you know, and there wasn't any way to make money, and that was the way we could make about $20 a month, you know, so going to drill for 2 hours on Wednesday night, so there were several of us that joined at that time there. November '48.
This is Crystal Martinez, and I'm interviewing my grandpa who was in the Korean War. Were you drafted into the war, or did you volunteer?
I was drafted. I was drafted, and it was a surprise to me when I got the card in the mail.
What year was that?
1950.
Can you give me a few words to sum up the Korean War?
It was a scary war, and I got injured, but it was worth it because I was fighting for my country.
Mostly the soldiers were young, no battle experience. They smiled a lot. They made the whole lot of us look like good-natured Yanks, glad to see a new town. At first, the towns looked like any towns in this part of the world. And the South Korean troops like any soldiers. You know, they worry about the same things and get tired. I mean, tired. We all wanted to ask, what was it like up there? What kind of fighting, terrain, tactics, guns? But as far as we were concerned, those Koreans couldn't talk. We were in a completely foreign country with no time to get acquainted. They emptied a town, hardly a thing left.
The 45th Infantry Division was one of only 2 National Guard divisions to be mobilized and see action in Korea. The other was the 40th out of California. The division got its mobilization orders and was mobilized September of 1950. Initially, they went to Camp Polk, Louisiana.
We was in Company L, 179th Infantry, 3rd Platoon, and I was a 3rd Platoon Sergeant. When we were in Camp Polk, Louisiana, and the draftees came in, the company commander called me and told me to go down to the PX and pick up the recruits. So I went down to the PX and I picked up all these recruits and brought them back for our company, and there were so many Texas boys in there that I told the company commander about the Texas boys, and he said, let's just make a Texas platoon then. So that's how the Texas platoon got started. We had 1 from South Carolina, 1 from Tennessee, and about 3 from Alabama and 3 from Oklahoma in there, and the rest of them were Texas boys.
They pulled us off the train, lined up out there, and at that time they say fall in. We didn't know what fall in was, but we finally figured out we had to line up. And this captain from the National Guard came by and asked us where we were from. He said, Texas. And he said, well, how would y'all like to stay together as a unit? And he said, we'd love that. Well, okay, then you're in L Company, the 3rd Platoon.
We caught trucks at Camp Polk, and we went to New Orleans and we got on a ship called the Marine Lynx.
They put us on a transport down in New Orleans, sent us down through the Panama and up the other side. It was built for about 2,500 people, and they put 5,000 of us on there.
28 days on that ship. I've never been sicker in my life. And that ship was nose up and nose down, and we were in a bad storm.
I made the mistake of getting the bottom bunk, and then when you hit rough seas, everybody above you getting sick.
We got across. It took us almost 30 days to land over in Japan at the northernmost island of Hokkaido,
Where they trained for just short of a year, very, very intensive train-up period. They were injected into the line in December of 1951 through Incheon along what was called the Jamestown Line.
We made a beach landing at Incheon. That is, we went in on the landing craft, and as it happened, not a shot was fired. But we didn't expect that. Went through Seoul and walked out to the 38th parallel. The Chowan Valley is where we ended up.
This was, of course, after the War of Movement had ceased. The initial attack across the 38th parallel by the communists, pushing everybody down to the Pusan perimeter. The invasion at Incheon, which caused the communists to retreat back north of the 38th parallel. The United States Army's pursuit of communist forces to the Yalu River, then are having to fall back 38th parallel once China got involved in the war, and at this point the war had become stagnant. And 45th Division was inserted at the line there, as part of an overall force to hold that line of defense. And the war after that has been called a war of outposts or a war of hilltops. And it's the worst kind of war imaginable. It's a war of attrition. It's all about the last man standing, who can sustain their army in the field and suffer the most casualties. The communists felt that because all the communist nations involved being dictatorships and the people have no say in the matter, that they would be able to withstand the onslaught longer than the democracies, which of course bow to the will of their people. And they figured sooner or later that the Western Allies would grow weary of the war and the people would demand that their armies be withdrawn from the field. So they thought they had the advantage in that.
All over the world, the United States Army is on the alert to defend our country, you, the American people, against aggression. This is the big picture, an official television report to the nation from the United States Army. This is the front line in Korea. These mountains are the backdrop for the fighting here. They're swarming with Chinese and North Korean troops. They make a beautiful picture from a distance. In the shadow of these impressive mountains stretching along the entire length of the front are the hills, the bitterly contested hills you read about in the newspapers. These are the strategic positions we must occupy, or keep the communists from occupying if we're to hold them and block any large-scale drive to the south.
Well, we're clobbering those hills right now. The enemy's dug in all over them. Chinese and North Koreans. Those guys got us up at 4 a.m. with artillery fire. Stuff was coming right in here, like express trains. We're dug in pretty good, though. Bunkers are about 8 feet deep. Home, sweet home.
These key hills are precarious positions. The communists want us off of them. Attacks are inevitable and frequent. To hold these positions, our men are forced to dig in, building deep trenches so they can move around unobserved, and barricading themselves in underground bunkers to escape the long nightly shellings.
They would be down in the valleys, you know, coming up. It's just like ants down there. I mean, I don't know, they must have had 1 million soldiers that they could put into a battle because they just overrun you by numbers. You couldn't kill them fast enough.
There wasn't anybody, the Jewish, Catholic, Protestant, that didn't go see the chaplain come and spoke to God. We thought it was a suicide mission.
And they came wave after wave after wave.
They hit us with everything they had, and then I'd say about 11 o'clock, they had a routine. You see a red and green flare come up in the valley, and the bugles blowing, and you knew they were coming.
Well, Old Baldy was by far the worst. It was labeled Bloody June, and it was very bloody.
Old Baldy was a mountain because it was one of the highest peak in there. You can control a lot of the area. There's hardly any trees left today because the artillery will smash trees.
When they hit us, they just overpowered us, just overran us. And they'd pick up whatever they wanted, just rifles mainly, and take prisoners if they could.
And it was just mass slaughter. They had never seen artillery pound a position the way the enemy pounded that hill. Of course, after that, it was just one, counterattack after the other one. And I think the last one, they finally got into the trenches.
What we had was DC-3 airplanes all the time, dropping parachute flares. But I never saw them coming, and didn't hear them either until they were pulling people out of the foxhole. I was hit by something, I don't know what. It hit me right here, and I couldn't move my leg. And that's when I laid down behind that tank. I knew that Conrad and Paniagua were pulled out of their foxhole. That's the first I knew that we were being attacked, taking them prisoner.
McWilliams, Hyde Davidson, and Paniagua got wounded. And that's the night that he told me that he was captured, that he was under protection of a rifleman from the Chinese.
I was in a listening post, and they came right up to the listening post, and they shot me in the arm with burp guns. One of the Chinese caught me, and my helmet went off. And then he, for some reason, he let me go. I guess he was hit with artillery. When we were there, they threw hand grenades at us inside the bunker. I'd get up and fall down, and then it was from the concussion of the grenades. Nothing was left at the machine gun nest, so I jumped a concertina fence and fell into a bomb crater. I was trying to get back, got behind a big rock there was artillery, fell and hit my leg. Our company was coming in to help us, and I got up and told them not to shoot me, that I belonged to Company L. And so the medic took me back and to the rear lines and where they operated on me.
They sent me back to Mash Hospital to pin his Purple Heart on him because he was so bad for a few days.
I was taken to Busan and spent a week in the hospital. They have on the report he was hit by a missile. I don't know what it was. It penetrated right here, but it was more of the impact that caused the problem.
That was a hard battle. We lost, if you look in the book, I think I had roughly about 27 killed in that series right there. Quite a few, about 7 or 8 captured. And I think the book I read was 51 wounded.
Old Baldy was one of those pieces of terrain that really had no tactical nor strategic significance. It had political significance. It was a contest between the two sides to see who was willing to expend the most human life to retain this useless hilltop.
They would fight for a piece of dirt that neither side wanted, neither side had any use for, just to prove wasn't afraid of getting GIs killed.
Everybody deals with war a different way. You know, some people clam up and never talk about it. I talk about the war to my kids only to a certain level. I'll tell them the funny things that happened, or, you know, there's always funny things that happen in war. You think they're serious at the time, but later you come to realize, well, that's kind of a stupid thing. I'll tell them those kind of things, but I won't tell them about bunkers being made out of bodies.
I get to thinking about all the good men that I had that got killed and wounded and stuff like that, you know, and I just don't ever like to talk about it. I know my grandson, he tries to drill me on that every time he gets around me, you know, about it there, and I tell him a few things, but I don't tell him everything.
What I went through, I wouldn't sell to you for anything. There's an experience that I had that I don't want nobody else to do it.
The original company that went into Korea, once they lost they've lost good friends, the likelihood of them making that close of relationship again is just about null, because once you lose somebody like that, you don't want that same feeling again. So the way your body and the way your mind works, I'll correct that by I won't make mistakes, make friends with anybody. I'll talk to them, I'll be friendly with them, but they won't become a close friend because you don't want to hurt like that again.
For the most part, particularly with World War II and Korean War veterans, they're of two minds. Many of them simply wish to forget about it. It's too horrible to remember. Others got back and they felt like, okay, that's over and done with. I lived through it. It's time to move on with my life. All or many of the memories associated are quite painful. And so a lot of these guys have spent 50, 60 years trying to put those memories behind them. And then, we got to the 50th anniversary of World War II, 45th anniversary of Korea, 50th anniversary of Korea, and the nation wanted to remember the events. And so suddenly everybody's turning to these veterans and saying, wow, you were there. What was it like? What did you experience? Well, you know what? I've spent the last half century trying to put the horrors of that conflict behind me. When I came back from the Korean War, nobody was interested. And all of a sudden you are?
We forgot about it. We forgot about the war that we were at. I think that's one reason why the public never accepted it as a war. But we wanted you to ask me something 10 years afterwards. I almost want to say, Korea, where's that?
Oh, it really bothered me, and I never understood and still don't understand. I made it back without a scratch. And there was some, what I consider darn good guys. They had family, they had something to come back to, And they got killed. And here I come back. Of course, I had a mother and a father and a sister, but no wife or children or anything. Why did I make it back and they didn't? That bothered me. Still, I don't understand it, but I guess I got something I'm supposed to do.
There's some things that you see and you experience that you hope and you pray that your kids never have to see. When you think about it, what did it cost us?
I know 9/11 happened, there was a disaster. A lot of people got killed. But you go by and multiply this by 10 or 12 or 15 disasters. You don't know what a town looks like or an area looks like when troops go through with the military once, and if they go through it more than once, there ain't nothing left. So what we were doing, I felt, was the good of the country.
I think it's the men and women that make up the armed forces of the United States are the greatest heritage that we could have.
I have healed a lot in 57 years, just forgetting what went on.
I got in a minefield with you, wouldn't have that.
We understand each other. We talked a lot about the patrols we went on and battles we got into, and it didn't hurt near as much as I thought it was going to.
You couldn't believe the way people got together after 50 years and remembered things.
When you see somebody for the first time that you was real close to for 55 years, well, it makes you feel good to be with them.
I've turned this all over to God, and He said, forget about it. So it took me years to get in that situation, but now it don't bother me like it used to.
I like to at least come back and see the ones that are still alive like me, and thank God Almighty to give us this light and continue on going. And I wish that God Almighty will keep us alive and to continue seeing each other, wish us the very best, and see our young generations grow up in a better world.